Going live. And we're live, so I always wait for that last. Oh, I got a warning. Oh, it should be okay though. So,
is there anybody else in the waiting room, or are we all set?
oh, there's Nancy. She just arrived. So,
okay.
So yeah, and then that's it that I've seen. But I'll let anybody else in that arrives.
All right. Well, it's 9:30, so we might as well get started, folks. Welcome to the March board meeting of the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. Another beautiful day. We've had lots of great weather this week, so we'll enjoy it while it's here. Just a reminder that Chris Harrington is acting as our host today. Oh, there's Nancy.
Hello?
Chris will be acting as our host. If you have any issues, contact Chris through the chat feature, and he'll try to help you out. Again, a few reminders. Please mute your microphone if you're not speaking. That way we don't get the background noise like the telephone ringing. Have your participant and chat windows open. And please use the raised hand feature. We'll try to keep an eye out for that. We can't always see the individual screens and see you waving your hand, but we'll try our best. And as Chris mentioned, today's meeting is being recorded and live streamed on our YouTube channel. And that's all part of our requirement to allow public viewing of the proceedings. Our First Nation territorial greeting. We will begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, and the Lunapiawak peoples, who have a long-standing relationship to the land, water, and region of southwestern Ontario. The local First Nation communities of this area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, Munsee Delaware Nation, and Delaware Nation at Moravian Town. In the region, there are 11 First Nation communities and a growing Indigenous urban population. We value the significant historical and contemporary contributions of local and regional First Nations and all of the original peoples of Turtle Island. So, I don't think we have any regrets. I think we're all just what everyone's here. So I'm going to ask Michelle to do the roll call, please.
Yes. Murray Blosh.
Here.
Alan Dale.
Present.
Don Edmiston. I didn't see him on the list, so I think we might be missing Don.
Okay.
Anna Hopkins.
Here.
Tony Jackson.
Yes.
Sandy Levin.
Here.
Nancy Manning.
Here.
Hugh McDermott.
Here.
Paul Mitchell.
Here.
Anna Marie Murray.
I'm here.
Brian Petrie.
Present.
Jim Reffel.
Here.
Joe Salter.
Here.
Mark Schadenberg.
Here.
Alex Westman.
Here.
Okay, thank you. All right, the first item we have is approval of the agenda. So Don's not here. Nancy, could you move that for us? And Anna second that?
So moved.
Thanks, Nancy.
And I second.
Thanks, Anna. Okay, that the Board of Directors approve the agenda as posted. If there are no comments or questions on that, I'm going to ask Michelle to do the roll, please, for the vote.
Murray Blosh.
Yes.
Alan Dale.
Yes.
Anna Hopkins.
Yes.
Tony Jackson.
Yes.
Sandy Levin.
Yes.
Nancy Manning.
Yes.
Hugh McDermott.
Yes.
Paul Mitchell.
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray.
Yes.
Brian Petrie.
Yes.
Jim Reffel.
Yes.
Joe Salter.
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg.
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
All right, that's carried. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest for today's meeting? Don't see anything or hear anything. So next we have minutes of the previous meeting. and that's the meeting from February the 18th. Moved by Tony and seconded by Sandy. Are you willing to let your name stand for the motion?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Any errors or anything from the minutes of the meeting from February the 18th? I'm not seeing any hands, so I'll ask Michelle to call the vote, please.
Murray Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Next, we have item number 4, business arising from the minutes. And just the one item is the response letter to the Mayor of St. Mary's. First of all, can I get Nancy to move that and Hugh to second it, please?
So moved.
So second.
Thank you. So the motion is the Board of Directors approve the recommendation as presented in the report. Everybody circulated this letter a few weeks back. We drafted it up, and but we thought we'd just give everybody an opportunity to look at it some more. And it's pretty straightforward, and we can send this correspondence on to the mayor. Does anyone have any questions or comments at all on this item? I'm not seeing any hands or hearing anything. So I will ask Michelle to call the roll, please.
Murray Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. We'll get that letter sent off right away. Item number 5, there are no delegations for today's meeting. And actually, item number 6, there's no business for approval today either. That takes us down to item number 7, and that's business for information. First of all, we have our normal Section 28 status report. Can I get Paul Mitchell to move that and Anna Marie Murray to second it, please?
So moved.
So seconded.
Okay, thank you. So we've got Tracy and the planning staff available for any questions or comments. Anybody have any questions or comments on this report? I don't see any hands. So if there's no questions or comments then we'll proceed to have Michelle call the roll, please.
Murray Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
That motion's carried. Thank you. 7.2, we have the health and safety report. That's an annual summary that we receive. Can I get Brian to move acceptance of that report and Jim to second it, please?
So moved. So seconded.
Thank you. Now we have Carrie Ramsey available. She's the one that put this report together. Carrie, do you have any comments you'd like to make? Any highlights you want to point out to us?
Alan, I'm not sure. I don't see Carrie on the list.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure she's at the meeting. So certainly either Tracy as chair of the Health and Safety Committee or myself will try and deal with any questions.
Okay, very good. Thanks. Any board members have any questions at all regarding the annual health and safety summary? Tony.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Just an observation, I guess there was one lost time accident or injury in 2020, but then later on I noticed that there was no accident investigation. What I'm used to is when there's a lost time accident, there would be some type of investigation. So the two didn't match in my mind. Could I get an explanation on that?
Ian or Tracy, who wants to tackle that one?
Yeah, unless Tracy has knowledge, I'll say through the chair. We're going to have to follow up with Carrie and with HR to understand that, unless Tracy has more information.
No, I'm trying to remember back again to our health and safety meetings last year. Again, I think it was a strain type injury, something along that line. So normally if it's something that someone's done on their own volition because of a pulled muscle or pain that way, there isn't much of an investigation. It's usually something something more serious, I guess, that there's an investigation about. But certainly we can get back about a little bit more of the details. Again, it's not as clear to me at this point in time, but we'll follow up.
Okay, thanks. Anything else, Tony?
No, through you, Mr. Chair. Just my experience has always been when there's been a lost time injury, obviously WSIB has to be involved, generally speaking, and normally there's an automatic report that's required out of that. So that's what brought my attention to it. That's it. Thanks. I'll look forward to the report.
Through the chair, if I can just speak to that, certainly WSIB notification is always, we err on the side of caution and we notify WSIB about almost any claim if it's even potential for lost time. So that step has always been taken.
Okay, good. Good to know. Thanks. Anna.
Yeah, thank you for the report. And I do have a quick question around the training. I noticed that in 2020, we did not do any outside training, and just curious to know if we are going to do some in 2021, and if not, are we still in compliance?
Tracy and I are probably looking at each other's tiles. Yes, training obviously last year was impacted by COVID and our ability to get together. Now, some training is virtual and that can continue, like WMIS. We have arranged for, first aid and I believe CPR. We are trying to do the required training, I'll say face-to-face, but it's obviously modified as well. So yes, those will continue this year. And again, I'm going to look at Tracy, but as far as whether or not we're in compliance, there are pretty strict requirements on some of the certification, and that's why we're proceeding with the training as best we can for this year. So I see Jennifer's got her hand up as well to speak to this. So either Tracy or Jen, if you can supplement.
I was just going to compliment that, yeah, that even the report, we made sure that we were definitely in compliance. So it's the second last bullet point in the 2020 training that although no outside training was completed due to COVID, we are still in compliance in all of our areas. If Jen has other comments to add, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, I just was going to just add to the fact that this year, yes, we're doing a lot of the training online, bringing in some of the trainers that do external training for our security officers, those sorts of things. It's all being done online this year, which we weren't able to do last.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Anna?
No, thanks. It's good to know that some training is going on virtually this year, and all's good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Paul.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to see that we have 13 staff members trained in mental health first aid. I know there's confidentiality issues here, but have we seen an increase in staff members reaching out for help with the unique stresses that they've been facing in the last year?
Yeah, Tracy or Jen, I don't have any information regarding that. I don't know if either of you have insight.
I can assure you, I do not have any insight on that. Again, we make it available. We have a poster that includes everyone's names and faces on it so that staff are aware of who are trained in mental health first aid and can reach out to whoever they're most comfortable in doing so. But I have no data to know who and how frequently that's being done, but certainly want to make sure that staff are aware and know that there's those resources to go to, especially in these trying times.
Yeah, I was just going to add that in our staff updates, we've really pushed the mental health and reminding staff that reach out to anybody. It doesn't have to be people that are trained in mental health first aid. Just please make sure that you're speaking to somebody. But as for the numbers per se, I'm not privy to that for sure.
Okay, and I apologize. I should have asked this question ahead of time, staff, to give them some preparation time, but it just something that popped in my head. But I think it's important, and I think it's really good that we do have that resource available. All indications that outside mental health resources are being really strained right now. So that if we have it available internally and everybody knows it's available, I think that's a very good thing. So thanks for the responses.
Good. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, certainly anything you hear about other mental health services seem to be well utilized these days. So any other questions or comments then from the board? I don't see any other hands. So if not, we'll receive this report for information. And Michelle, can you call the roll, please?
Yes. Murray Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
and Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yep.
Okay, that report's been approved and carried or received. Thank you. Next report is 7.3, COVID-19 programs and services response. Can I get Joe to move that and Mark to second it?
So moved. I'll second it.
Okay, thanks. Ian, can you give us some of the highlights of this report? Some pretty sobering news there, but I'll turn it over to you to give us some more comments.
Sure. Yeah, I do have to thank managers for putting this together and summarizing the changes for you. And I will flag that we're suggesting these changes are to comply with public health guidance, to keep staff and the public safe. That's absolutely the driver. But it's becoming more and more clear that some of these changes may end up being permanent. It's just a different way of doing business. In some ways, it's almost more efficient, or it's helped us modify business to be a bit more efficient. But really, I'm going to disclose the purpose of this report is to flag the uncertainty for this coming year and trying to manage your expectations. I think managers certainly have their expectations. We're cautiously optimistic about how the year will unfold. And really, this is all about budget. So our budgeting process, I'll give Christine huge credit for pushing us and training us to be more and more accurate in our forecasting. But 2021 still comes with a lot of uncertainty. Our budget's probably the most accurate it's been, but I hope you can appreciate from some of the changes, not only the changes that we have, but the prediction of demand for services. And ironically, through a lot of the business summaries, you'll see we're expecting higher than usual demand, whether it's for permit applications or the conservation areas, tree planting. You know, we are anticipating, early indications are it could be busier than ever. And yet from the staffing side, we're still trying to be cautious and conservative. So that's the purpose of the report. You do need to understand what we're doing specific to this year, but really this is a heads up that when it comes budget time at the end of the year, I want you to understand the challenges we've had in forecasting revenue and expenses, and that may get expressed at year end. So beyond that, I'm happy to answer any questions, or most of the managers are on the call if there's specific questions about program areas. So thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Comments or questions? Mark?
Yeah, thanks a lot. I guess one program or service not mentioned on your list, and it's kind of related to the Upper Thames, but maybe not necessarily, is the Thames River cleanup, because I know different groups and associations have banded together to create a meshed program with different groups, like almost like the Environment Advisory Committee. And there's also, of course, the Friends of the Thames River and other groups and associations have done this in April. And I know this past winter was great for getting outdoors as far as using the trails, but I think because of that, there's significantly more, let's just call it what it is, trash on the trails and on a watershed and shoreline. Just wanted to know if there's plans on still doing the Thames River cleanup, the formal Thames River cleanup program for this year.
I'll start, but I'll look to managers. So the Thames River cleanup is organized through the community. And I think a few years ago, we recognized Todd Sleeper at our AGM as the founder of the Thames River cleanup. And Upper Thames has always been a supportive partner, as have many municipalities and other not-for-profits and service groups. So the last I understood, it was kind of on hold, just waiting to see what public health guidance was, but nothing had been scheduled. But I'm going to look if there's any other manager that has more insight. I know I got the information from Steve Sauter, but I don't believe he's on the call. Teresa?
Hi. We do keep in touch with Todd because it's kind of his event. And what we do with our community groups is kind of organize them to kind of join in with the Thames River cleanup. And Todd did not want to go ahead with the cleanup last year. This year, I think he's still feeling that way. And so what we did with some of our community groups and friends of groups is did smaller cleanups, because we could kind of follow all of our COVID operating procedures. We bought our own litter pickers, like the grabbers, and so that we could have people work in family groups to kind of do some cleanups. So I can't tell you for 100%, but last time we did talk to Todd, he still was uncomfortable in organizing a lot of groups because of the risk of bringing bigger groups together. So we're trying to do some smaller cleanups with families and friends of groups.
Okay, thanks, Teresa. Anything else, Mark?
No, I know it was a program that was sort of outside of the UTRCA, but just know it was kind of related to COVID-19 and whether or not to be able to go ahead and do that this year. And it goes without saying that if a family had some garbage grabbers and 5 or 6 people that were sort of related, they could go out and find a place to clean up some mess. That's for sure.
Yeah, true enough. Yeah. Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to either Ian or Sharon. I know one of the areas we were talking about at budget time was some of the vacancies that we've had. And given the challenges of COVID and recruitment and hiring, how are we progressing on filling the vacancies?
Through the chair to you, Sandy. Yeah, last year we kept some, I'd say, key positions vacant because of budget priorities. We have posted and we're hiring for those positions, and I'll say it's going well, other than if you ask Sharon, she's a bit frazzled with the just, oh, Sharon's on the call, the volume of interviews trying to replace those positions plus our normal hiring. And I won't speak for Sharon, but I know we have started to fill those positions for this year. So Sharon, I'll ask you if there's anything further.
Yes, we are well underway with our hiring of those positions. We just posted another 2 permanent positions internally yesterday. So I would say within the next month or 2, we'll have the majority of those vacant positions filled.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Anything else, Sandy?
Nope, that's it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thanks. Marie.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mark touched on this a little bit, but I'm wondering more generally with some of the volunteer programs, what the status of that will be. Like, will there be volunteers, say, with the species at risk? Or I'm concerned about continuity and not losing volunteers over time.
Ian, you want to tackle that, or?
Yeah, I may point to Chris specifically to talk about the Species at Risk program. I mean, his report summarized a bit of that, and then I think Teresa as well. So Chris Harrington, I don't know if you want to.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Species at Risk really benefited from some crazy hardworking volunteers that Scott seemed to attract every year, and they were a really big loss last year. In my discussions with Mary and Scott, we've talked about it and don't think we're going to bring volunteers in to help out with that. There's limitations around, they would help out. We would have crowds of people in the wet lab when they're doing, which is a small space. So we kind of came up with an operating procedure to work around that. So we could have a couple people in and a couple people on the outside, but it's just not feasible. And, the vehicles and getting to sites. So unfortunately, no, we won't have volunteers back for that again. So it's a big loss, but it's kind of continues as it was. So.
Teresa, do you have anything to add at all with volunteers in your department?
Yeah, it's very timely that you bring this up because we had a community partnerships meeting yesterday and spoke at length about volunteers because we have so many people who want to be involved in these projects. And so actually I was going to go to, my plan is to go to the managers meeting with a couple of different proposals in terms of how we could involve volunteers in a safe way. We're still, the friends of groups are still meeting virtually, and they will actually stand outside in a circle and meet, together and do these projects. But we do have things like wildflower plantings, tree plantings that we want to be able to involve volunteers, and people want an opportunity to be doing things. We just have to make sure that we can train them properly and provide all the PPE and have the right protocols in place. And we feel that we can. So our intention, now this is assuming I can get it past the managers, our intention as a unit is to involve those volunteers this spring in things like outdoors, like it's all outdoors. We can't go on any school grounds, but it will be things like tree planting, wildflower planting, and if we can do some cleanups, that would be great too.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Marie?
No, it's just that, keeping the concept out there of volunteering is important rather than have it fade away and then have to get everything going up again. So it's good to hear that there's some continuity and, just don't want to have to start up and, go out and restart these programs. So that's good to hear.
Yeah.
And through you, Mr. Chair, can I add one last thing I just thought of. There has been some creativity in keeping a couple volunteers around for the Species at Risk program because people that were working were bringing in spouses or people that lived under the same roof with them. So I don't know how much they were volunteered or voluntold, but nonetheless, they did come out and help out. So we did have a couple in, but way down from what we would typically have. So.
Okay, well, it all helps though. Good,
Yeah.
good. Anna.
Yeah, thank you, Marie, for that question. I think it is really important to look at addressing our volunteers. I sit on a long-term nursing home committee, and we just had that conversation as well yesterday, and we are opening up our long-term cares to here in the city to allowing volunteers to come in. Obviously, vaccines are a hot topic these days, encouraging people to get vaccinated as well. So as we sort of come out of this or go into recovery, it's good to have that conversation. And when it comes to the volunteers, I do have a quick question. In fact, two questions, one around the ESAs. And I know in the City of London, we're experiencing probably the same thing that ESAs are experiencing in our parks with paraphernalia, encampments. The increase in use is wonderful to see, but obviously that creates other pressures. And I know, Ian, you mentioned this is maybe a budgetary consideration for next year, but I would kind of think that ESAs are going to be used just like our parks, even coming out of COVID. So I don't know if we're kind of looking at the future of that and the need to take better care given the costs increasing. I think that's going to be a consideration maybe that we should be all sort of looking to in the future. I just don't see people not using our parks and ESAs as we come out of recovery. I think that the need will still be there. So I guess I'm just wondering if we are looking into the future in a different way of managing ESAs, or is it too soon to come up with a plan? Whoever wants to take that one. Chair.
I can start, but certainly I'll look to Alex to fill in. So for the board's information, the environmentally sensitive areas in London, Upper Thames owns some of the land, City of London owns some of the land, but Upper Thames manages those under agreement with the city. So part of Anna's comment is, we have very specific responsibilities under that agreement, and we're compensated accordingly. The agreement's in place, I think, for 5 years. Alex can correct me on that. So I will say up front, the city was very accommodating in 2020 in understanding how, certain deliverables or expectations through the contract just weren't possible, necessarily, but the city was very flexible and very supportive of changes that were made. And I think Alex, through his report, the same consideration will be for this year. And looking to the future, I'll look to Alex to comment on that.
That's through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there was the usage of the ESAs in the City of London and similar sites that the authority owns and manages directly was certainly a lot heavier usage. And that created, you're right, a lot of things, including a whole lot more garbage and a lot more encampments and everything else that comes along with it. It was even more difficult to enforce the rules and regulations, trying to be on site and still be 2 meters away from everybody on site. So it was a difficult year, but we have met with the city a couple of times and they're very aware of all of this. And what we ended up doing last year, we probably did more management of the ESAs and less capital because of these issues. And recently the city, because there's a lot more encampments than normal, and to deal with encampments is very time consuming. But recently the city notified us that we will not have to do that anymore from here on in, and the city will be dealing with encampments directly. So we've had discussions about those types of things and the heavy usage on the ESAs, and I agree. I think this year anyway, there'll still be heavy usage, but we're having to change our tactics a little bit on how we manage it. And we've also hired an additional staff this year to help out with that this summer. We were short a couple staff last year because we didn't do a lot of capital and we were concerned about the budget, but we got through the year on a good note, and we've just hired another staff to help out with these issues. And not dealing with encampments will be a huge help to us. So it's one of those things that every month you see how things are going and you change your approach and tactics a little bit, but we got through it, and we got through the same type of issues on our own lands because even our small rural CAs were heavily used compared to normal.
Okay, thanks, Alex.
Yeah,
You
thank
have a-
you for that. Mr. Chair, just to, I appreciate that update because it is a concern here in the City of London, and I'm glad that the ESAs are being managed as much as possible, and the extra hiring that is needed, as we all can see, they are heavily used. So thank you for that.
Okay. Nothing else then, Anna? No. Last call then. Anyone else with any questions or comments? Not seeing anything. So this is a motion to receive the report as presented. And I'll ask Michelle to do the roll call, please.
Marie Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Pete,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you. Next item we have is 7.4, and it's a verbal update regarding our rental house policy in the County of Perth. And so Alex and Bill, I think, are going to give us a verbal update on what's happening there. So, Alex?
Yes, I think Bill's here through you, Mr. Chair. Bill, you there?
Yeah,
Okay.
Alex, I was just wondering if it would help the board if I went through a kind of a quick chronology of events for the last 6 months to bring them up to where we are today, if that was
Sure.
okay. So about 6 months ago or so, we hired a planner to kind of represent us to submit this application to Perth County Council for an amendment to the official plan to allow us to be able to sever and sell 5 houses. So our consultant prepared a presentation. We went to Perth County Council last, I believe it was late November, December, as a delegation to the council, made a presentation for the application. Perth County staff made their presentation to oppose it because it didn't fit in precisely with the plan. We fielded some questions from the council members. No decision or vote was really taken. Perth County Council asked staff to come back to a future meeting with a bit more information. That meeting was held in February. Again, we made another presentation, a briefer presentation to council, again, to support our position. Perth County staff again made another presentation, and council put it to the vote whether to accept our application or not. It wasn't, it was a very close vote. There were definitely the councillors from Perth, West Perth and Perth East were definitely in support of it because that's where the houses are located. East Perth and North Perth, some questions. We didn't really know where they sat for support. I believe we did get some support from those 2 municipalities because at the end the vote was to support the application. So that was on February the 18th. And then there was an appeal period that ended this past Monday, March the 15th. Our consultant didn't think there would be appeals just based on that there was no opposition when we made a presentation to both Perth Council to West Perth and Perth South individually to those council meetings. There was no opposition at those meetings. So, but you never know. So we kind of waited. We didn't hear anything. And then Thursday, we kind of wanted to call the council to see if we could get a confirmation that there was or was not any appeals, just so that we would be able to update you on the latest information. Our consultant called over there, and finally he, I think it was either late Thursday or Friday, found out that there was an appeal. The appeal was by the province, which surprised us a little bit. But anyway, that's where it's sitting right now. We're going to meet with our consultant on Thursday to kind of look at next steps. I'm not sure what the procedure is, if there's an appeal by the province to a county council. I really don't know where that goes. So that's about where we are right now. So we're going to be meeting to see where we move forward from then. That's kind of how we got to this point. So I'll just leave it at that if you have questions about anything thus far.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So just so I'm clear, the appeal is against all 5 houses. It's sort of a package deal, all 5 houses together?
Yes, Mr. Chair, our application was to allow us to sever and sell the houses. It wasn't for a specific house. It was, we were going to start with a specific house, but it was for allowing us to do it for any of the houses because we didn't fit into the normal where we were agricultural doing a combined sell, and it was a surplus farmhouse for a farmer. We don't have a farm business number. We had tried numerous times to get one. We just could not do it. We didn't qualify. So it would be for all of the houses. That application would let us move forward to sever all the houses.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Brian?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. My guess is that if it's going to go to the LPAT, is my guess, and that did you say that the county planner did not support the application?
The county went by the provincial policy statement, which because we were not a farm operation, did not have a farm business number, we did not fit the actual exact criteria. So they go by the exact criteria. So they opposed our severance because we didn't fit the criteria.
So that means that the county's going to have independent planning matters if they're going to willing to fight this that would support that, because the county's not supporting it. Their own staff isn't supporting it. So I guess it's right now, I guess it's up to the county whether they want to take on the province on this or not, whether they deem it worthwhile. So when we're severing off these properties, it's because of the other portion of the property is we need that to meet our mandate, correct?
Yeah, they're actual farms. Our plan was to sever off the houses because we're not supposed to be in that rental business. Plus, they were costing us a lot of money in maintenance and upkeep and under the landlord tenant board, but it was to keep the agricultural land for revenue to do some programs, to continue with our programs. To offset our program costs.
Sorry, just to follow up, that's not the land isn't required as per flood mitigation for flood protection?
No, most of the land would be out of floodplain that we currently rent out.
Okay, so here's another option I'll just throw out there is that if this doesn't go through, one thing to explore perhaps is that if we can come to agreement with Perth that a municipality has more rights to sever land than a person or another entity, they can do what's called a reference plan on it, which allows them to circumvent the Planning Act. So it's kind of a long way around, but it's something that may be able to transfer the land to Perth County, and then they do a reference plan and then transfer back what's not needed. again, I don't know if the province would still be upset with that, but that's something to look into. They have different options. And that's, I think, because it's not flood protection, we could, if it's not land that we absolutely like we're required to have, then we might be able to do that way.
Yep, we'll certainly have to look at our options going forward, how we're going to proceed with this. Mark?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Alan. I guess my first question would be is all 5 of these properties are currently tenant occupied?
4 of the 5 are, 1 is vacant right now.
And in process of doing the severancing, was it going to be a house plus 3 acres, a house plus 5 acres? What was sort of going to be the size of the lots?
The county guideline was in a 2-acre maximum. In that envelope, you had to have the house, the septic, and the well. And we had already done some mock-ups, and we could get all 5 of those within that 2-acre envelope, including the well and the septic and the house. Yes.
Since we've been in this process for quite some time about saying, hey, we want to get out of the rental business, especially the residential rental business. At any point in time, have any of these 4 tenants been offered sort of a right of first refusal or sort of get their name in there to sort of say, okay, I'll purchase this house at X number of dollars and I'll wait till a closing day arrives? Or are these houses just basically going to go right on the open market for so-called the highest bidder?
In the past, we have sold houses, but we've always gone to a public process. We've sold houses through public auction, sealed bid, and through real estate in the past. We've actually had people inquiring how we would go about selling these houses, and we've just told them that basically it would be a public process, and that's all we know at this point because we hadn't got that far in our discussions.
Yeah, if I can interject, Mr. Chair, that requirement that's a provincial disposition policy requirement, is that for us to dispose of land, it has to be through an open public process. So Mark, the right of first refusal, we've been asked that by tenants and others in the past, but according to current policy, we can't do it that way.
Everyone knows how much values of real estate have skyrocketed in the last recent years. Is it safe to say that these all 4 of these tenants are getting exceptionally attractive lease rates?
Yeah, that would be probably putting it mildly. They're getting below market lease rates. Some more than others, but they're all getting a pretty good deal. Yes.
Anything else, Mark?
No, that's it, Alan. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Next, we have Alex Westman.
Hi there. Yeah, so I've had one of the tenants reach out to me with concern about the sale of the homes, that it may displace his family because he's just not capable of affording the property at the, with current market values. And I was one of the loudest people saying, hey, listen, why are we in this business? But, as it happens sometimes, in retrospect, we go, okay, well, what are the long-term impacts here? And I think that's something we need to be conscious of, is that there are families living in these homes. So I think, I'm going to retract a little bit on it and say, I hope that we can be conscious of that and going forward, because these, like in the case of the individual that contacted me, they've been in their home for 22 years. And it's, it would be a huge problem for their family to relocate. So just wanted to put that out there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Paul.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I take it from Bill's comments that he hasn't found out yet exactly what grounds the province is using to appeal this, but it seems really strange that we've heard so much talk in the new legislation about core services, and the reason we're getting out of that, one of the main reasons we're getting out, is because we don't want to be landlords anymore. But yet the province wants to fight us on us getting out of a non-core service. So it'd be interesting to see if it does go to LPAT, this is going to drag out for a year or two with the backlog they've got, whether the new legislation will come in and have some impact identifying core and non-core, and if non-core is residential, then it seems to defeat any objections that any other level would have to what we want to do with these properties.
Yeah, different ministries have different views. I don't know. Do we have any? I guess we're just waiting, Bill, or we're just going to wait and see. We should be hearing more information about the appeal soon.
Well, we meet this Thursday morning in a Zoom meeting with our consultant, who is probably working through the response now from the province. And like I say, I'm not familiar with what comes next. So we'll find out probably Thursday and come back with some sort of report for the April meeting.
Okay, good. Thanks. Anything else, Paul?
Oh, it was more of a comment than a question. It just seems really strange that the left hand and the right hand, which I guess shouldn't seem strange knowing how government works, but that one side's telling us one thing and the other side is saying you can't do that. So I'm interested to find out what the grounds are for their appeal.
Right. Yeah, true enough. Tony.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, in response to Paul, it would seem obvious to me that the ramifications of doing something quite contrary to the bylaw to sever houses, which is meant specifically for farming community, the implications and the precedent for all organizations other than farmers to start going down this path, having investment groups and others try to do the same thing and circumvent the Planning Act and bylaws and so on and so forth. It would be quite a snowball effect potentially. So I'm speculating, but I would suggest that's probably more important, more broadly in the province than the core mandate versus non-core mandate scenario. The other thing is, I guess, the sale of the houses. If that was to take place, also that goes into a restricted capital reserve as well for future purposes of capital needs, not for supplementing our budget or operational costs, as I understand it. Thanks.
Yeah, true enough. Thanks, Tony. Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Interesting discussion, and it raises for me a question. Do we want to, we have an outstanding issue with some of these properties, and is it time actually to look at getting provincial permission just to sell them as opposed to doing these severances, which also seem to take a long time? Through you to staff.
Ian or Bill, who wants to tackle that?
I can start, and I think, Sandy, that suggestion might be, depending on how optimistic we are about the appeal process, that might be a consideration. So, to speak to some of the previous questions too, some of these properties are, like the houses, are tied to bigger agricultural properties and could be theoretically sold without a severance. That introduces a budget issue. Bill alluded, I think, to the fact that these agricultural properties do bring in significant revenue for our land management activities. And, given the province cutting our funding, given Bill 229, we expect our levy funding to be impacted. To lose this, like to speak to Tony's point, that if we did sell the land, that those revenues have to stick in a capital reserve. We can't use them for operating. So we would definitely be losing operating funding. That doesn't mean it's still not the right decision, but we would just have to do that analysis. So Sandy, I would say that's one of the options we'll have to have on the table if the severance option is no longer there.
Okay. On that basis,
Sandy?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'm just wanting not to lose that thought if we do have to explore that option. So I'm wondering if a motion is appropriate at this time to ask staff for a report on the land disposition option along with the reports that are going to come forward regarding the severance.
Okay. Can we combine that with a motion to receive this verbal update as well?
Oh, by all means.
So we'll receive this verbal update and we'll ask staff to come back with a further update regarding the severance and other options as well.
Yep, I'd be happy to move that.
Okay, seconder, who wants to second that?
Paul would be willing to second that.
Paul Mitchell, okay, we got Paul to second that. Have you, were you able to get that written down, Michelle?
Yeah, I think I got most of it, and I'll go back and listen to the recording to get the exact wording for the minutes,
Okay.
but it should be good. Yeah.
Any comments or questions then? Last call. We'll receive this and look forward to a future update on this issue. I don't see any hands, so I'm going to ask Michelle to call the roll, please, for the vote.
Marie Blosh,
Yes.
Alan Dale,
Yes.
Anna Hopkins,
Yes.
Tony Jackson,
Yes.
Sandy Levin,
Yes.
Nancy Manning,
Yes.
Hugh McDermott,
Yes.
Paul Mitchell,
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray,
Yes.
Brian Petrie,
Yes.
Jim Reffel,
Yes.
Joe Salter,
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg,
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, the motion's carried. Thank you very much. And thank you to Alex and Bill. It's been a long, winding trail to get down through this all, and over the years, this issue is, but we'll continue to pursue it and see where we end up. So thanks to staff for all their work on this. Next item we have is 7.5, and we've got a short presentation today. It's on natural cover. Kathy Quinlan is going to give us an update. We've talked before about the fact that we're losing some natural cover. We've been trying to do some tree planting and natural cover and kind of reverse the trend. So this is something that really is involved with our programming and our policies and in our strategic plan. And I said it before that one of the things about conservation authorities is the fact that they have the people and the talent, and they have the boots on the ground to get things accomplished. And this is a perfect example of that. So I'm going to turn it over to Kathy to give us a presentation.
Thank you very much, Alan. Good morning, everyone. Chris, I think, Chris, you're going to move the slides for me, are you? Okay, great. He's nodding. So Terry Chapman and I put this presentation together actually about a year ago to summarize the vegetation, the woodland and other natural cover, the condition of our vegetation and based on the 2015 aerial photography and comparing it with the 2010. Next slide. Maybe.
Sorry, I'm trying. Why is it not going? There we go. Took 2 tries, sorry.
Great. So the Upper Thames has been mapping vegetation and forest cover for many years. Geographical information systems technology and digital air photography allow us to more accurately map vegetation cover and track changes. In the past, we had print air photos and topographic maps, and it wasn't nimble enough to allow us to do any kind of detailed change tracking. So starting in 2000, we had our first set of digital photography, it's black and white, and roughly every 5 years since then, we received another set of digital photography from Springtime, and they're all full color now and high resolution. And every time the photography comes available to us, our staff map the vegetation cover for that year. And our watershed report cards come out every 5 years as well. So we can relay the changes we see on the photography in our report cards through our forest conditions grades and other data we present there. Next slide. So with the photography, even small changes to small woodlands can be tracked and measured over time. So this just is an illustration of a a small woodland that we could see how it looked over 4 different photographies. And so it's losing a little size as it goes on. So you can see the quality of the mapping is quite good to allow us to do this kind of mapping. Next. So why track vegetation change? Ultimately, it's an indication of forest health. Environment Canada has guidelines that recommend at least 40% forest cover to sustain at least some of our native species and to protect the watershed health. Now, that's not likely achievable here. We're sitting around 11–12% forest cover. But our goal, our watershed goal, is to have no net loss and some modest gain over time. And this will protect our residents from the worst effects of climate change and help conserve our local birds, wildlife, and other species. And we know the ecosystem services that forests and green spaces provide, so-called green infrastructure, everything from reducing flooding, carbon sequestration, protecting surface water and groundwater, cooling our microclimate, blocking winds, cleaning the air, providing recreation and hunting, and so forth. So a long list of things that our green spaces do for our watershed. So how is this done? So by overlaying the last updated mapping layer with the newest photography, our staff can see 3 basic things. One is loss. So this is situations where woodlands or other vegetated areas have been cleared for urban development or agriculture or whatever the case may be. It was there in the last set of photography. It's not there today. Something's there in its place. We can also see gain. So we can pick up new vegetated areas such as young tree plantations, new meadows. These are features that weren't there in the last photography and they are there today. And then finally, change. We can see vegetated areas that have matured or succeeded or changed for one reason or the other from one type of habitat to another. Most commonly, it's things like we see a meadow that has matured to a thicket or a thicket has matured to a woodlot. So all these changes are recorded and categorized on the GIS, and it's not a simple task, but our staff have been very diligent about improving this over time. And we're fortunate to have skilled staff. Tracy Haycock has many years experience at interpreting air photography and has looked at many years of photography and mapped our vegetation. Next. So some definitions before we get started. The vegetation units that we're looking at are at least 1/2 hectare and over 30 meters wide. So anything smaller than that, we're not tracking in this study. It has to be big enough to be actually counted as habitat. The 5 basic vegetation communities we're dealing with are woodland or forest. I'm using those words interchangeably. These are habitats with mature trees, a closed canopy. They can include upland and wetland forests, deciduous and coniferous, but it doesn't include windbreaks and street trees and that kind of thing. We also have young plantations. So these are areas where trees have been planted, often in rows, and they're not yet mature. So the photo on the top right shows a young plantation in the middle in red, and you can see the rows of trees and open space between them. And then surrounding that is a mature forest. So you can see the difference there. Other habitats are thicket, which are habitats dominated by shrubs and young trees, and they can again be upland or wetland thickets. And then there's the meadow category, which are habitats dominated by grasses and wildflowers with some scattering of shrubs and trees, again, upland or wetland. And the photo on the bottom right is an example of, on the right side of the photo is an area where there's thicket and meadow community up against a mature coniferous forest and deciduous forest on the left. So obviously the habitats butt up against each other in many circumstances. And the final category is water. We include ponds and wide water courses if they are connected to these features. We're not counting, ponds in the middle of a farm field all by itself. Next. So our study area is the Upper Thames watershed. So our portions of Perth, Middlesex, and Oxford, City of London, and all the urban municipalities in there. So these data don't include the full extent of the counties, just our watershed. So I'll present the results in 4 different ways or sections. The first is we'll look at the woodland loss and what we see there. Then we'll look at the woodland gain, and then we'll look at the changes to the other habitats, the meadows, thickets, young plantations, and how they've changed in these 5 years, and then wrap it up with an overall change in the natural cover in the watershed. So firstly, woodland loss from 2010 to 2015. The table on the left summarizes the data by municipality. So we have London Middlesex at the top, shaded is Woodstock, Ingersoll, Oxford. Below that is St. Mary's, Stratford, Perth, and we have a little bit of Huron County. So if you're following along with the tables, the order is always the same. So you see in this table, we have two middle columns, one called cleared converted, one called cleared other. So cleared converted is areas where woodlands have been clear cut and converted to urban or agricultural use. You know, we see the new use already. The other category is areas where trees have been cut to such an extent that the woodland is basically gone. It looks like a meadow from the air photography, but a new land use hasn't replaced it quite yet. And it's obvious it's probably just a matter of time. But the total, you'll see, go to the bottom of the table, the total woodland loss has been 353 hectares over these 5 years. And every municipality has seen some loss, some more than others. You know, some had more to start with, for example. But that 353 hectares is 872 acres, so it's not a small number. And it represents about 0.6% of the woodland cover. So we've lost 0.6% of woodland cover from 2010 to 2015. So is that big? Is that small? So when we look back at our trends, this is the data we've got since we started doing this kind of work with the digital photography. From 2000 to 2006, we saw a loss of 575 hectares. And that was a real eye-opener because that was the first time we were able to do this kind of tracking. And it made people realize that, you know, we need to take notice of this. The next set of photography, 2006 to 2010, we saw far less, 230 hectare loss. And this last time, it's somewhere in the middle, 353. So when I added up all those together, we've lost 1,000 hectares of woodland since the year 2000 in 15 years. So that just gives you an understanding of the numbers. So where you know, what's the woodland being converted into? So the usual categories: agriculture, urban development, aggregates, and rural development. So agriculture, we lost 129 hectares in that category. And what they're seeing is, you know, small woodlots being cleared or the edges of larger woodlots being nibbled away. We rarely see really large woodlots all coming down at once. These losses may or may not have been permitted under the Woodland Conservation Bylaw. Some counties are starting to track that. And the reasons are obvious: high commodity prices, land prices, farm amalgamations, that kind of thing. Under urban development, 83 hectares lost there. And we think most of the loss is from past approved development that, you know, predated our current protection requirements. Under aggregates, not as much loss, just 12 hectares, but this is, some woodlots are cleared under licensed pits. And they're often rehabilitated to ponds or agriculture, rarely brought back to forest. And finally, rural development. These are areas that experience woodland clearing for things like estates with large landscaping, new farm dwellings, new barns, road allowances, rural non-farm building, strip development, that kind of thing. Next. So this is just a summary of the percent of woodland loss by land use category. So agriculture, 55%, urban development, 35%, and 5% for each of the others. And this kind of makes sense because that's roughly the percent land use of our watershed. Next slide. Here's some examples of photography. So this is an example of woodland loss in an urban situation. So you'll see in the picture on the left in 2010, there was a new subdivision next to a woodlot, obviously, and by 2015, that subdivision had taken out more of the woodlot. It was obviously in a phased in scenario. And you'll also see by the orange arrow there that part of the woodland has already been cleared. It's not yet a subdivision, but the trees are lost. So that would be an example of that cleared, not yet converted category. And here's an example of woodland loss in a rural situation. A small woodlot got a little smaller. and it's unfortunate because that was a nice little buffer along the creek, and that was lost in a 5-year span. Next. So here's some good news. We have a woodland gain category, woodland gain by succession. Obviously, woodlands don't pop up every 5 years, but they grow up over time from other habitat types. So mostly it's young plantations and thickets that have matured to the woodland category. So you'll see on the table on the left, if you go to the bottom, we've gained 808 hectares of woodland through the succession process, which is equivalent of almost 2,000 acres. Large. It was very surprising for us to see this. So this shows us that our past reforestation efforts are now reaping rewards. So all the work we did in the the 70s and the 80s, these trees are now to the age where they can be classified as woodland. But it's important to note that young woodlands don't contain the diversity of older original forests. So we are replacing the tree cover, but not necessarily all the biodiversity that went with them. Next slide. And here's an example of a young plantation that matured into a mature coniferous forest. So on the left, 2010, you could see rows of coniferous trees, lots of open ground between them. And by 2015, they had reached mature height, closed off the canopy, such as it is. And we have many large blocks of plantations that were planted back in the 70s and 80s through our programs and others that are now hitting that mature age range. But as Terry noted, that we're unlikely to see this much succession in the near future because reforestation efforts have slowed since those early days of the authority. But we still have 350 hectares of young plantation in the watershed that could mature to woodland in the next 50 years or so if they're allowed to. So it also shows that our continued partnership projects, with planting more of these and helping people maintain these plantations is very critical. And here's an example of a natural thicket that matured into the woodland category, 2010. You'll see a scattering of shrublands there, lots of open ground in between. And by 2015, the trees had closed in. And we've got a lot of this type of habitat on the landscape. Over 1,300 hectares of thicket is in the watershed. And that also could mature to woodland in the next 50 years if they're not changed or converted. An interesting note is that with the emerald ash borer and all the ash tree die-off we saw in the past 10, 20 years, a lot of woodlots lost their canopy cover. So they actually didn't look like forest from there and they converted to the thicket category. But now these areas are rebounding back as the surviving trees have grown up and closed the canopy, and Mother Nature has done her thing and healed them. So it's good to see that change happening. Next. Okay, so total woodland change. We've seen the loss, we've seen the gain. So what does it equal out to? Well, basically we've seen a net gain in woodland cover across municipalities, all municipalities except London. And this is largely due to the succession, as I just talked about with the tree planting from decades ago. The total is 430 hectare gain, which is, so we had 11.0% forest cover. And now we've got 11.19, so a gain of 0.12%, and we'll take it. But still to reiterate that the loss of older woodlands is still a concern because that's a loss of resiliency against climate change, stormwater retention, habitat for native plants and animals, and so on. Next. So now the other categories, the non-woodland. These are our meadows, thickets, young plantations. And when we look at how much of that habitat we had in 2010 versus 2015, we see there's been an overall net loss of 304 hectares. And the losses it's complicated. We see a lot of meadow that were lost. 700 hectares of meadow were lost in the 5 years. But we also know that we lost some of the thickets and young plantations to the woodland category. So they just simply matured. They weren't clear cut. And we also had gains in this scenario. So 500 hectares of new meadows and thickets and young plantations are now on the landscape that weren't there in 2010. So there's kind of a revolving door here where we see some meadows being clear cut and new meadows being added and so on. But next slide. These meadows, thickets, and young plantations, these habitats come and go quickly. They transition, they age, sometimes they're cut back. but they help tell the fuller story of the vegetation change and help us to predict what we're going to see in the next 5 years in terms of woodland cover. And these habitats are, they're not supported, they're not protected by any policy, but they they support many species of wildlife as well in and of their own right, and they become our woodlands in time. So here's our wrap-up slide, the total change in natural cover. So when we look at all the vegetation cover types, you add the forest to the meadows, to the thickets, everything together, compare 2010 to 2015, we had an overall net slight gain in vegetation cover, 127 hectares. Only London had a net loss. So it's important to track all these vegetation communities to see the trends coming along. And our mapping is constantly improving with time, and we're picking up smaller and smaller changes and features, and getting accuracy is improving as well. So our next steps is we'd like to share this data, share the science with municipal councils and staff and environmental committees, ag organizations, any other group that's interested in the data. And obviously my presentation to you today is a first step in sharing this data. And hopefully it helps us evaluate the efficacy of our programs and policies, knowing what we see now. We're going to incorporate these new figures into our 2022 watershed report cards that we're starting to work on this year. And we recommend counties keep data and natural heritage system studies up to date with the most current air photography so they can show the changes as well. The 2020 swoop digital photography was flown last spring, and that will be available to us in 1 or 2 years. And then our staff will repeat the cycle and map the vegetation cover, and then we'll have the newest data within a few years. So there's always a time lag. Next slide. And finally, these data show that our tree planting, naturalization, and protection efforts are working, but the need is ongoing. There's continued pressure on the landscape. There's only one earth, as they say. Partners around the watershed are helping, looking for ways to get involved. Apparently, John Enright says we've never seen so much interest in trees as last year. People are home a lot now, and they're looking at their properties and wanting more tree cover there. The Upper Thames, we have our target of establishing 1,000 hectares of new veg cover by 2032, and focusing on the low-hanging fruit, which is our river buffers and marginal lands, looking to double our current rate of planting of roughly 29 hectares a year to something close to 60 by 2032. And we're looking to reach landowners who may be new to us, rural non-farm people, industrial landowners, anybody who's interested in putting a little nature back on the landscape. Next slide. And just want to end off with, we want to share all the programs that we have available to help improve the watershed health, help people, help municipalities, help all our partners to do what they can to improve the watershed health. Everything from free site visits for landowners to get information, tree planting programs with grants, all our community partnerships and Friends of Group working hard in their little corner of the woods, the community education for students. We research tree diseases and various planting methods, invasive species control, land management. We've got over 400 hectares of land that we manage. All our planning and regulation services to protect our existing wetlands and hazard lands, very important. All our conservation areas, recreation opportunities, the monitoring of the water, the fish, floodplain mapping, ag research. It's a full sweep of programs, and hopefully we're still here to help improve the watershed in the future in many ways for people to get involved. And that's it. So thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Yeah, some items there for concern, but also some good news, lots of information there. So any comments or questions all for Kathy on her presentation? I see Sandy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kathy mentioned that it'll be shared with member municipalities. Will the presentation also go back to the original data collection? So show the trends from 2000 all the way to 2015?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we will try to do that. The way we've done it this last year with more detail on the non-woodland habitats is something kind of new. So we have the woodland data from the past, but not necessarily all the nuanced data that we have now. But I can go back and pull some of that. And if we do the municipal presentations, I can summarize that municipality by itself, so people don't have to look through the whole list of all the other watersheds. Or
yeah, that was my thought as well. And I'm wondering two other questions. One is there capability to do this on a very narrow basis? And what I'm thinking of is particularly the City of London, where proponents of development have had to prepare an environmental management plan to do either mitigation or restoration. Is there a way to use these photos to track that? Certainly, I know you would need the information from the EIS that went with it, but theoretically, is that possible?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't know if Terry Chapman's on the line here, but we have talked about that kind of thing. It would mean matching up various polygons to other polygons to track it. I think it's possible, as whether it's there is the time and the infrastructure needed to do it, but that's something we could definitely talk with our planning department about.
Okay, thank you. And last question is, out of curiosity, is this kind of work considered core as we interpret core going forward, or this important work might not be considered core by the province?
I think you're asking the wrong girl, but
I can chime in, Kathy. So Sandy, that remains to be seen, but obviously we would take the biased approach that natural cover assists with flood mitigation, retains meltwater and rainfall on the landscape, encourages infiltration to groundwater. So we would absolutely argue that this is core business. Whether that argument will be accepted provincially or not, I don't know.
Yeah, thank you. Last comment, Mr. Chair. I would hope that this kind of thing might get communicated to the chair of the committee that's looking at this provincially, to ensure this kind of work gets to that table and gets highlighted as being a core part of what conservation authorities should be doing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep. Thank you, Sandy. Alex, you have a question, comment?
Yeah, actually, I have a question. I sit on the Sauble Bayfield board as well. And the subject of the gypsy moth came up. And because we're kind of in the middle of a bit of an upswell of gypsy moth population. Now, we're doing some aerial spraying to contain it in some of our woodland areas that we own as a conservation authority. So I was just wondering what the thoughts are. Is there any noticeable impact on our lands with the gypsy moth? So.
Who wants to tackle that?
Yeah, I don't think I'm the right person, but I don't know if any of the foresters are online today. And I know it's the gypsy moth situation. It goes in cycles, and it's not like the emerald ash borer that wiped out every ash in the air in complete southwestern Ontario. This will the gypsy moth is less devastating, but on a property by property basis, it can be very concerning.
It might have been picked up in some of last year's aerial photography, but it's way too early for us to know that. So I don't know. Maybe we'll have to get some input from forestry staff and get back to you on that one, Alex. I know some of the other CAs, they have mentioned about the pressure over the Brantford area as well, heavy pressure due to gypsy moth and some other pests, but we'll have to get some information about how it's impacting us.
All right,
anything else, Alex?
Nope, that was it. I'm just really kind of impressed with the numbers. That's looking good for us. So great.
Yep. Okay, thanks. Anna.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just to follow up on Sandy's questions about this information being shared with municipalities, I may have missed it, so I do apologize. But how is it being shared with municipalities? Is it going to, is it presentation to planning committee, or is it just going to planning staff? Or just like to have a better understanding how this is shared, especially in the City of London. Obviously, we've got our challenges here.
Yeah, thank you. Good. It's a good question. We haven't made that step yet, but we certainly, I think maybe want to start with some staff. I know several years ago when we had the data, some staff were caught off guard, and they would have preferred to see the data first before getting, you know, too far gone. So really, I appreciate any suggestions in that regard. So because we're in a virtual world right now, it kind of makes it easy to do this via webinar or a Zoom meeting. So we'll put our heads together with that and maybe reach out to some of the board members for advice on what first step we could take into your municipalities.
Thank you for that. I would definitely encourage you to reach out to us in our municipalities to see how, I would think every municipality has their own way of doing presentations, but this is information. It's data supported that can be shared. And I would just encourage you to do that. I think if there isn't a plan, we should have a better idea. I know if I'm at council and I make these suggestions or comments, they're really not taken as information. I think sharing this information is really important with staff, and hopefully to committees as well, and eventually getting to council. So please reach out.
Through you, Mr. Chair, can I just add one last thing, that we do make the data available to all municipalities. So we've shared it, and we do readily, anybody that wants it, we can cut it out on any shape or size or boundary that we have, and through other things like natural heritage studies, it even in some cases extends beyond our watershed. So the data is, our door's always open to share the data with anybody that wants it and help them know how to read it and understand it and all that kind of stuff. So we've done that in the past and we'll continue.
If I may, through the chair, just to follow up, thanks for that, Chris. It's great that the data is available, but you need people to go to it. And I think this is more about the presentation. I just want to thank Kathy. It's a great presentation. It's good information. It's supported, and it's information that municipalities need to hear.
Yep, and staff and politicians, that's right. Jim.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Kathy, I appreciate your presentation today. You may have mentioned this a little bit in your speaking, that in 2022, you're going to be rolling up the data for the next report card. Is that correct? I think the last one was 2017.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so we work a year in advance. So this is the year we're supposed to be working on our 2022 watershed report cards. So I can't give you an exact date, but it will be sometime next year.
Okay, so this is critical because it's tied into our budget projections and all of that in terms of how we're the indicators are showing progress or holding steady or declining. Given all of the pressures of the day and the last year, is 2022 going to be doable for this report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I hope so. After March Madness ends, I hope to put more time to it. This summer, we're getting pretty good at pulling these things out, but they do contain a lot of information. So we'll do our very best, I think, because I think it is a really good year to put our report cards out.
And I know that through you, Mr. Chair, it's not just the big book that you publish with all the data, but also you have some online reports and online media use, multimedia use as well.
Yeah, I'm sure once they're completed, our media platforms will share it far and wide for sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sorry, can I step in for 1 second, Mr. Chair? I'm not sure if there's a confusion there or not, but the data that Kathy showed today will be what the basis of the next report cards are. So I think Kathy's answering in the context of being able to get the report cards done in 22. It won't be the new photography. Right, sorry. So I'm not sure if that's what you're asking, Jim, or not, but I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that we're behind a photo each time when we do the report cards.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think what I was asking for, a lot of the data that is presented in the large document, likely I'm thinking that there would be some highlights that are provided online just to try and illustrate some of the high level results from the last few years. Is that correct?
Yeah, so every time, so for example, in the forest conditions section, we have a new section on loss and gain. So every sub-watershed should be able to have those numbers now, that, those detailed numbers about how many hectares came and went, and some analysis in that. So every individual report card, say it's the Medway or the Avon, has all that data summarized, so people can read through it. And they can go back to the big document you have to rifle through the individual tables that have far more information.
Right. Great. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Mark.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Alan. I think it was by Kathy Quinlan to the point that I'd like to maybe see that report, because I'm one of those social media junkies myself, Facebook and whatnot, to see my sound's working here. To be able to put that full report that she just gave us maybe on the social media for the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, like the Facebook page, encapsulized. I know her report was probably only 5-6 minutes long, that there'd be people certainly be interested in watching it. Maybe that's part of the public education process we could go through.
Right, yeah, and I think it's a very good point, and we want to share the information. But I think what we'll first do is focus on the municipal presentations, just so councillors and staff have the data before the general public, just so nobody is caught unawares with the information.
As a quick follow-up then, would you be, for example, in Oxford County, be prepared to go to the Oxford County Council, or would you also be prepared to come to Woodstock City Council at the second tier?
Yeah, I think all are possible. I have to look at my schedule, but there's a lot of municipalities, but that is one thing we really would like to see happen. It is some of our targets, is sharing information with our municipal partners, so they've got the data as well. So it should be easier now that I don't have to drive everywhere, but hopefully we'll hit them all at some point this year.
Thanks a lot.
Good. Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions or comments. So can I have a mover and a seconder to receive this report as a presentation? Moved by Anna and seconded by, I got Joe there. Moved by Anna and seconded by Joe. Okay. I don't see any last comments or questions, so I'll ask Michelle to do the roll call, please.
Marie Blosh?
Yes.
Alan Dale?
Yes.
Anna Hopkins?
Yes.
Tony Jackson?
Yes.
Sandy Levin?
Yes.
Nancy Manning?
Yes.
Hugh McDermott?
Yes.
Paul Mitchell?
Yes.
Anna Marie Murray?
Yes.
Brian Petrie?
Yes.
Jim Reffel?
Yes.
Joe Salter?
Yes.
Mark Scheidenberg?
Yes.
Alex Westman?
Yes.
Okay, that's carried. And again, thank you very much, Kathy, to you and Chair Terry, and all the other staff that were involved in putting that all together. Imagine it's quite a process when you take all the aerial photos for the entire watershed and sit down and compare them to the previous years. So good efforts there, and thank you very much for the presentation. Item number 8 is the March for your information report. There it is. Horned lark. Isn't that one a beauty? You don't see those every day. One I'm not familiar with at all, a horned lark. So lots of good information there in the for your information report. I want to highlight Imtiaz Shah. Imtiaz Shah won the Ontario Volunteer Service Award. He has been heavily involved with the Professional Engineers of Ontario, the London chapter. He's been doing that for years. He's been the chair and vice chair. And just recently he was presented with this award, Ontario Volunteer Service Award. So congratulations, Imtiaz. And some other good information there on spring planting and outdoor flowers, and also online education. As was mentioned earlier, big demand for online education programs. So make sure you have a read over of all the good stuff in there. Next, we have item number 9, other business. And I think Ian's going to give us a bit of an update on a couple of meetings. So Ian?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually have 4 things. I'll try and be quick here, and Teresa's going to help as well. Just as an update, I think the board is aware that through the town of St. Mary's and St. Mary's Golf and Country Club, they had contacted Minister UTRCA at MECP about a meeting with their concerns around, we think, the operation of Wildwood Dam. So that meeting has, it'll take part in 2 stages. The province has already met with the town several weeks ago. They're meeting with us this Thursday morning. So, you know, we're unsure what to expect or what the expected outcome is, but just to let you know that that meeting has been scheduled. Number 2, just again, recognizing this is March, spring field work for all staff. We've made reference to it through the FYI and through the program updates. So just making you aware that the busy season starts now, and that includes hiring staff to be able to deliver the programs. So that's well underway. I'd like to, with your permission, have Teresa just provide an update about some feedback she's received about one of our programs. So Teresa, if you can provide that.
Thanks, Ian. I feel a little bit like I'm doing a commercial, but we had some kind of phenomenal feedback from a school board, and I just wanted to share with you just a little bit of information. As Ian mentioned, we've been doing a lot of online work with our boards of education. They're requesting a lot of support, and so we've done a lot of developments, and it's been exciting to face some of those challenges of getting our messages out, you know, in terms of curriculum and virtually. And one of the programs is called Water is Life, and we partnered with the Huron-Perth Catholic District School Board. It's a collaboration that creates an integration of kind of outdoor and Indigenous education, and it's all based on the book The Water Walker by Joanne Robertson. So it's a series of videos that the authority had created, everything from the book being read by the author to videos around what is a watershed. And this is videos and presentations and lesson plans for primary, intermediate, junior, every age group. Video of a puppet show using, we have the floodplain model video, Wildwood Dam. And so it's a complete package. And we just got some absolutely amazing, using the word amazing because that was the heading of the email they sent us from the board saying amazing, amazing, amazing. This is just a fantastic job. And we actually had one of the learning coordinators in tears. So I just wanted to do a little commercial because the staff have really kind of pulled out the stops this year and created some really wonderful programming that I think we're going to be able to use for a long time.
Great, thanks, Teresa. And then, yeah, I mean, that just speaks to the quality of the programming and the passion of staff, which is tremendous. The last update I wanted to give is just to a bit of a plug for Conservation Ontario. So as you know, Conservation Ontario is our umbrella organization over all 36 CAs. And with changes to our legislation and the pandemic, they've really stepped up and try to facilitate discussions and keeping us all kind of on the same path. So about every 2 to 3 weeks, they host a general managers meeting. Yesterday, Teresa and I participated in that meeting. And, you know, there was like 14 different topics, but just as examples, the one issue was ministerial zoning orders, which I know Anna has a question to me about MZOs. And this has been a change impacting some conservation authorities very significantly, with just a huge influx of developer-driven MZO requests to kind of, in my opinion, circumvent checks and balances on smart and safe planning. And it's just how we as conservation authorities can deal with it. Also, group insurance. So our through Conservation Ontario, the Upper Thames participates in an insurance program, a collective insurance program. And while rates, I'll throw the bad news out, are going up 22%, it is still a package of insurance that I think provides best value to conservation authorities generally. And then the final example I'll give is the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, and Christine's reported on this in the past. Conservation Ontario is working with all those authorities who applied for that money, who in most cases received the money and then were told after the fact that, by the way, you're not eligible, so don't use it. So Conservation Ontario, it looks like, is coordinating an appeal for the authorities to pursue and put an argument forward that we should be eligible for those funds. So those are just some examples that, you know, when you see the budget, if you look through our line item budget, we contribute in the neighborhood of $50,000 to Conservation Ontario each year as our levy payment to them. But I have to say the value we receive in return far exceeds that cost. And, you know, those are just a few short examples. So that's the end of my comments, Mr. Chair, unless there's any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ian. I don't see any questions. So at this time, Ian, I'd like to point out the fact that this is your final board meeting as the general manager here at Upper Thames after 17 years. Ian is a graduate of the University of Western Ontario with a master's degree in geography, 32 years experience in resource management working for the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority and Conservation Ontario. Ian, you told us you only came for a summer job, but you've obviously parlayed that into something quite a bit more, so it's great. Ian's technical background is primarily in water quality, but he also has experience in the development of community-based management plans for public natural areas. Ian was heavily involved in the designation of the Thames as a Canadian Heritage River. And he did extensive work to develop provincially standardized watershed report cards for conservation authorities. He helped develop Conservation Authority Information Management Strategy as part of the Water Resources Information Program. He led the organization through a needs assessment, municipal discussions, and the implementation of our LEED Platinum brand new watershed conservation center. Also involved in the development of a multi-year results-oriented strategic plan referred to as the environmental targets. And we're still working on that, but we're going to see some real advancement with that program. That's great to see. Long time coming, but it's underway. And Ian's also a strong advocate strengthening ties between the Conservation Authority and its municipal, provincial, and federal partners to achieve new and stronger environmental targets for the watershed. Pretty good for a boy from Meaford. So congratulations, Ian, on a very fine and distinguished career. I think all of us know that Ian is certainly very approachable, very open, very honest. He's someone that is very concerned about members of the board and members of staff. Has always been looking out for the welfare of staff, whether it's their personal lives or emotionally, or how they're getting along in the organization and mental health. We've put a lot of emphasis on that over the years. So Ian's going to be missed by the board members, staff, staff that he's worked with in member municipalities and other organizations, colleagues at Conservation Ontario. Ian's career has touched many lives, but we know that you won't be too far away, Ian. You're a big outdoor enthusiast. We know that you can do lots of windsurfing and boating and hiking, and we're sure you'll be coming back to the conservation areas to engage in some outdoor activity. And maybe you can, no doubt you'll stop by the Conservation Center for some treats, and maybe join the Run for a Burrito Club. And that's quite an accomplishment. And I'm going to turn it over to our past chair, Sandy Levin, to say a few words now. Sandy?
Thank you, Alan. And I didn't suspect that when I was at my board orientation 6 years ago, that when I asked Ian about succession planning, that it would mean I'd be talking about his retirement today. Now that day's nearly upon us. I've known Ian off and on for a number of years, and now as a board member. And one of his many attributes, as Alan alluded to, as a leader, he's created a work environment where people can flourish. He knows his strengths and he knows the strengths of others, which means he doesn't need to sweat all of the details. Another attribute you've probably noticed is his calmness. And I can say even when he was flustered, Ian never appeared flustered. And his calm manner really showed me as a board member that the organization has been in good hands. And for someone who started with the Upper Thames in a summer job, he's left it stronger, more respected and more capable than any time in its history. Well, okay, he wasn't around 70 years ago to prove that, but for the past 17, we've been really lucky to have him as a general manager. So thank you, Ian. And I'll hand it over to Teresa and Chris. I think they've got a video for us.
I'll just give them a minute to get it queued up here.
Yeah. Speak amongst yourselves.
There we go.
Ian, congratulations on a long and successful career, and the fact that you're able to retire on your own terms, just an indication of how successful it's been. You started at an entry-level job and worked your way up to the top, and once you got there, you provided leadership through your skills, your ethics, and your personality over many years. You're still a relatively young man, so I'm interested to know what you're going to do now that you're retired. And if I could make a suggestion, I think you should run for municipal council. And I'm not sure if your house is in St. Mary's or South Perth, but either one of those would be a really interesting fit for you. So whatever you end up doing over the next 30 or 40 years, I'm sure that you will make many more contributions to the people of our corner of the world. And I wish you all the best in your retirement.
Yeah, and I know you look back on this day and smile, because a lot of the work that's been done over the past 17 years of your leadership has been because of the kind of manager you are, the kind of leader you are. And the Upper Thames Watershed and the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority are all in better shape because of the work you've done. So thank you. You'll be missed, but you'll have quite the legacy to look back on and smile. So look forward to hearing good things about you and in the future, and take care.
Ian, on this final day of your career with Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, congratulations. You've had a lot of accomplishments over the years that you've created a legacy for environmental health in the London region, and I hope that you come back in some form, looking for other opportunities that you can contribute after you've had a chance to decompress and have a little bit of rest in terms of retirement. So again, congratulations, and we hope to see you again someday, and happy trails.
Hi Ian, it's Anna. I remember the first time I ever met you was in your office as a rookie counselor a number of years ago. And boy, oh boy, was I ever impressed with your knowledge. I'll never forget that conversation and other conversations that we've had. And I want to thank you for being so helpful throughout the years. I have appreciated it very much. I cannot believe you are retiring. You are way too young. But as you begin a new chapter in your life, I am reminded that every road we do travel, we do meet ourselves at the end of that road. And as you begin a new chapter in your life, I hope the road that you will be traveling on is even going to be better than the one that you were on. I want to wish you all the best. Be healthy, and I will miss you. Take care.
Hey, good morning, Ian. What a wonderful morning. Just out for my early morning walk around the Avon River here. Got my favorite hat on. Ducks are squawking at me here. But anyway, just thinking, sitting in the maple sugar shack last night, boiling away, and thinking of the last decade and a half, or nearly 2 decades, I guess, of working with you there. And since you've been captain of the Starship, UTRCA, a lot of water's run under the bridge. Actually, not all of it, but most of it anyway. And I have to say that certainly appreciate your hard work and dedication. I know when you thought about retirement, I was probably the top of the list of reasons why, but anyway, I'm sure that's not the only reason, and do appreciate everything you've done. And certainly you have to know that if there was ever a chance to turn the clock back quite a few years, you'd still be the first choice. Thanks for all your hard work and dedication, and enjoy your next phase of life.
Ian, I wish you many years of happy, healthy retirement. Your leadership will be missed by the board of directors as well as staff. You have provided a firm foundation for the Upper Thames to continue to prosper. And please remember, retirement is not the end of a road, it's the beginning of the open highway. Best wishes, Nancy.
Ian, your leadership and vision have served the authority very well. On behalf of all the residents of Ingersoll, we'd like to congratulate you on your retirement.
Ian, you're retiring, and this is awesome. I want to thank you for all you've done to further the mandate of the Conservation Authority. Over the years, you faced many challenges, and you did so professionally and with a great deal of dignity. And as a result, you're well respected by all. So now you can look back on a very successful career with a great deal of pride, and you can look forward to your retirement with a smile on your face. Enjoy, and thanks.
Congratulations on your retirement, Ian. Best of luck in the future, and hope you get to Carolina soon for some windsurfing. Well, congratulations again, Ian. We wish you all the best. And I say we wish we were there in person to stand up and give you a standing ovation. But under the circumstances, yeah, I think we're all doing it individually now at our homes. Certainly appreciate all you've done for the organization and the community. And as everyone said, we wish you all the best and going forward. I'll turn it over to you if you have a few words you'd like to say before we move into closed session.
Yeah, great. Well, not sure what to say other than thank you and make me second guess why I'm leaving in the first place. But I do appreciate your kind words. But you know, I'm very aware that any credit directed to me has to include a list of board and staff that supported and helped. No one does anything by themselves here, and that's one of our strengths, and it's shared credit and it's shared blame either way. So you know, I think I've told many of you, and in my emails, I have nothing but thanks and gratitude for my time in this role. I've had the incredible good fortune, and I know it's good fortune, to work with professional and passionate boards through my career. And, you know, I've done lots of reflecting in the last month and a bit, and a lot of the things, Alan, you referred to, whether it was the building or Glengowan. But honestly, I think it's the smaller stuff that probably stands out, whether it was a conversation by the snacks at a board meeting or to Tim Hortons or just some check-in calls. And yeah, I can't think of a time that I wouldn't want to live again. So that's been great. It did take me a while to realize there'll never be a good time to leave, and I'll never be fully ready to leave. There's just way too much I'm going to miss, especially the staff and the board. So I have to say I've worked with, I think it's 8 chairs now, counting you, Alan, and all have had the same values. They've been servant leaders, the environment's first. They've been humble and supportive of staff. And from my point of view, you couldn't ask for more. And while I've had a long list of fantastic board members I've been lucky to serve, I do want to single out right now Alan and Brian as chair and vice, and Sandy as past chair. You know, one of the reasons I felt more comfortable retiring now is I think that leadership group is the right group at the right time. Obviously supported by all the rest of you around the table as well. So, you know, despite, and I'll say it bluntly, despite the province's current short-sighted and misinformed efforts, I honestly believe there's way too much environmental need, too much public support, and too much energy from this group and staff to stop us from being successful. So I do want to say thanks to each and every one of you for the time and energy you're giving to the Upper Thames, for your support for staff. It's really part of what makes this place unique and why I feel blessed to have been part of it. So it's been a good ride. So thank you very much, Alan and everyone. I appreciate that.
Good. Thank you, Ian. Yep. All the best, and yeah, we wish you well. All right. Next item we have on our agenda is item number 10, to go into closed session. Motion moved by Alex and seconded by Marie. Are Alex and Marie willing to move and second that?
Yes.
Second.
Thank you. Okay. The motion is that the board of directors adjourn to closed session. Michelle, can you do the roll call, please?
Marie Blosh.
Yes.
Alan Dale.
Yes.
Anna Hopkins.
Yes.
Tony Jackson.
Yes.
Sandy Levin.
Yes.
Nancy Manning.
Yes.
Hugh McDermott.
Yes.
Paul Mitchell.
Yes.
Anne Marie Murray.
Yes.
Brian Petrie.
Yes.
Jim Reffel.
Yes.
Joe Salter.
Yes.
Mark Schadenberg.
Yes.
Alex Westman.
Yes.
Okay, that motion's carried. So we're now going to closed session, and we'll just let Chris.
Yep. Sorry, here we go. I think we're back.
We're all set, Chris. We got
Yes.
everybody back, and we're back live again. Perfect.
Yes, as far as, sorry, let me check one more participant. Let's make sure I haven't missed anybody out there. No, I think everybody's in, so we should be good.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so we just have one item to deal with before we adjourn the meeting, and that is to announce the fact that we have a new general manager. So on behalf of the Board of Directors, it's my great pleasure at this time to introduce the new General Manager, Secretary Treasurer for the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, Tracy Annett. So congratulations, Tracy. Certainly welcome you in your new role here at the Upper Thames. And we look forward to working with you in the upcoming months and years. And Tracy, I don't know if you want to say a few words at this time before we adjourn the meeting.
I don't think she's here.
Oh, okay. I thought she was here, but okay. Well, we'll have lots of opportunity in the future to hear from Tracy. So with that, there's no other business for us to conduct at this meeting. The audit committee will be meeting momentarily. We'll have to log off of this, and then the members of the audit committee will have to dial back in to the other meeting. So thank you very much, everyone, for your participation and attendance today. Big thank you to staff for putting everything together, and especially with Ian's presentation. Really appreciate everybody, Sandy and the staff. They all got together and put that together. So as I said, it would have been nice to have been there in person, and we could have all given Ian a send off in person, but we did the best we could under the circumstances. So
Ellen, it looks like Tracy is back.
Oh, Tracy, you're there.
Sorry, just a little bit of a delay logging in, watching the.
No, that's all right. So Tracy, we made the announcement, and as I said, welcome aboard as the general manager now, and we look forward to working with you in the coming months and years. And I'll turn it over to you if you want to make a few quick words before we adjourn the meeting.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I just wanted to extend my thanks to the recruitment committee for putting my name forward. I feel quite humbled to be selected, because certainly, as you've heard from today, Ian leaves some big shoes to fill, but certainly recognize that we want to continue with the history that we've had at the Upper Thames over the last 70 odd years, and to continue in that, and really noting that it comes from staff and the team that's been assembled at the Upper Thames. So much is our decision making and what we do comes back to the professionalism and the dedication of the staff that we have here at the authority. So again, want to continue with that legacy, and thank you so much for putting your confidence in me for moving the organization forward into the future. Thank you again.
Good. Thank you, Tracy. All right. Last item we have then is a motion to adjourn. Nancy, are you willing to move that for us, please?
I am willing to adjourn.
Thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Have a good afternoon.